Well, President Ramaphosa of South Africa and his team have a lot on their table as they battle to save a country faced with weak economic growth, deteriorating debt situation and major headwinds for state-owned enterprises. The country's GDP published earlier this week shows growth contracted by 0.6% in the third quarter of the year. Well, debt crisis in government enterprises such as Eskom and South African Airways have also remained a major concern. Let's look at some of the developments out there from South Africa this week. I'm being joined by an economic analyst there in South Africa, Trinity Ncube. Hello, Mr. Ncube. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, let's begin with the third quarter GDP numbers released earlier this week. Was it in line with your expectations?
Certainly. There was no surprises there. When I look at the number of job losses and the contraction within the mining, agricultural, and transport sectors, there were simply no surprises there. It's just been going within that trend from here on until let's see what happens in the fourth quarter. But it looks recessionary to me, but I guess we'll speak about that.
Well, data from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange shows that foreign investors are beginning to ditch South African stocks and bonds. The rand has also continued to weaken. Is this a concern yet?
Absolutely. I mean, for the past 18 to 24 months, we have seen this trend of bonds and stocks being moved out of the country. However, we need to remember that not only portfolio investments have been moving out of South Africa. For the longest time, business, investors have been very uncomfortable. Therefore, there's been a lot of uncertainty. Even when you have those people who have FDI in the form of multinational companies, they have always been keeping a lot of cash on their books, not really investing because they do not understand or know what is going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. There's a lot of uncertainty. So I'm not surprised that a lot of money has been going out and it will continue to do so. And it's obviously a concern.
Now, the two government enterprises have continued to exert debt pressure on the government. We have the SAA, that's South African Airways, and of course, Eskom. Just yesterday, the government announced it's ceding control of SAA and placing it in a business rescue process. Would that do the magic for the loss-making airline?
I'm not convinced. SAA is not a priority. If you ask any South African, most South Africans would need Eskom, need electricity to run businesses, to light up your homes. With SAA, I'm very, very concerned why it's still a topic. I think the fact that none of the local investors were able to jump on, in serving as SAA immediately raises concerns of the viability and the processes, the products, and the people within that, within that airline. I think it all comes down to politics, where unions have a sway in what is being said within all these negotiations. And I'm very concerned that we still have billions trickling down to SAA. I won't be surprised if it's tax dollars money that is going to save SAA.
For some people against this new measure, having a national airline was a point of pride. Do you think so too?
I think I agree with that. And as I just said, there's no economic justification of still pouring money into SAA. Let the private people run SAA or any hybrid system that you can have, where you can have public and private partnership with the processes going through efficient and effective ways of running SAA without wasting taxpayers' money. At this point, there's no other explanation. I don't think the policymakers could see a situation where South Africa, one of the biggest economies in Africa, having no airline. That would have been pretty embarrassing for them. But the economics of it says otherwise.
All right, let's look at Eskom, another power cut for you guys right now. How are you guys coping? Just wondering.
I just hope we don't run out of power while we're speaking. It's been terrible. I mean, for business, you don't want your business being constrained by high electricity and data costs, and to also you find yourself in a situation where you might not even have the expensive electricity. That's just uncalled for. There has to be something that can be done. But yeah, it's the reality, is the norm, which is unacceptable.
So what options do you think is left for the government in rescuing these two enterprises? Is there anyone out for them?
I would say let's prioritize ESCOM. However, it doesn't mean just dishing money to ESCOM. As I've said before, we need to ensure that there's effective strategy operations within ESCOM. If you had to break it into different entities, and I understand the reason of saving ESCOM is to preserve jobs. Same thing with SAA. Let's preserve the jobs. But it's the how do we do it? I just find it that there are certain things that government is good for, and there are certain things that government has a track record of failing at. Having said so, I think they've exhausted all possibilities. There are investors who are coming in. All the investors that come and try to bail out all these institutions are very nervous, given the track record and the risk profile of this government that we have. Hence, at this point, let's wait and see what happens. But I'm not convinced, I'm not confident in the manner in which all these entities have been handled.
All right, now, PwC, in its assessment of the economy, said a look at the recent quarter-on-quarter and year-on-year growth data, the economy points to further gloom. What is your own outlook for the fourth quarter and, of course, going into next year?
Well, a few weeks ago, I was very optimistic about where the economy was going. I still have that optimism. My optimism stems from the fact that I see a lot of Black entrepreneurs who are in small and medium business sectors who are actually doing a lot to grow this economy. Unfortunately, you also have policy constraints. So if you look at the macro scale of it, the economy is going downhill. That's a fact. We expect a recession even before the budget speech. Hence, I'm very I'm optimistic on one side of people doing the right thing, but on the other side, the government is becoming constrained in terms of actually building the economy. So I agree with PwC. I see us going into a recession, and there could be a further downgrade from the rating agencies. From there on, I mean, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to take a lot of resilience among the hardworking South Africans who can actually invest and create jobs for ourselves. I mean, that's the only option I can see going forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ncube. I join you in being optimistic as well. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of the day.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
The IMF has approved the second tranche of a $247 million loan to be paid to Angola under its extended fund facility following a review of the Southern Africa oil producers' progress under the program. The IMF originally approved a facility totaling $3.7 billion in December 2018 to help Angola manage twin budget and balance of payments crisis after tanking global crude prices ripped a hole in its revenue. Angola is Africa's second biggest oil exporter and relies on sales of the fossil fuel for about 65% of total tax revenue, but a combination slack crude prices and years of mismanagement of state oil producer Sonangol have left it struggling for funds. And finally, Zimbabwe's central bank has asked the International Monetary Fund to overlook the country's shortcomings in achieving fiscal targets and allow a program to help restore the economy to run its course. Eddie Cross, a member of the Monetary Policy Committee who attended the meetings held with a Washington-based lenders delegation on Thursday, said policymakers expected a tough report from the IMF team, which is in the country until December 11, to review progress under a staff-monitored program. Some of the achievements include a reduction in the budget deficit, the establishment of an interbank market, and reducing state employee costs. However, the gains have been overshadowed by the worst economic crisis in a decade. Monthly inflation surged to 38% in October, and while the Statistics Agency has stopped publishing an annual price growth rate, cross-put it at 400%. All right, that's a wrap on the program for today and, of course, for the week. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimezi Ogi. You're welcome.